Single human dad saved 2 orc sisters, until he witnessed what they were hiding. Winter, in the northern marches, didn't ask permission. It arrived like an unwanted relative who overstayed their welcome by about 4 months. Cold, relentless, and with a tendency to kill anything that wasn't prepared for it. Miles had learned to respect winter the way you respect a wild animal. You didn't fight it, you survived it, and if you were smart, you stayed indoors. But Miles had never been particularly smart. At least, that's what his late wife used to tell him. She'd say it with that smile that made everything okay, the one that said she loved him anyway. That smile had been gone for 3 years now. Buried under 6 feet of frozen ground in a grave, Miles still visited every Sunday, weather permitting. "Papa, the fire's getting low." Ruby's voice pulled him back from thoughts that had a nasty habit of dragging him under. She was 10 years old, with her mother's dark hair and eyes that saw too much for someone so young. 3 years of being the only woman in a house full of grief and silence had made her grow up faster than Miles wanted. "I'll get more wood," he said, pulling on his heavy coat. The kind with fur lining that used to belong to something with teeth. "Stay inside. Don't open the door for anyone." "You always say that. And you always do it anyway." She grinned. It was the same grin her mother had. The one that said she'd do exactly what she wanted and somehow make you feel good about it. Miles stepped outside into cold that hit like a physical thing. The kind of cold that made your lungs hurt when you breathed. The kind that killed. He'd been a hunter for 15 years, long enough to read weather the way some men read books. And this weather was screaming at him to stay inside. But they needed firewood, and firewood didn't collect itself. He was halfway to the woodpile when he saw it, green, against white snow. In a world where everything was supposed to be dead and grey and frozen, there was green. Miles had fought in the border wars, had seen enough orc raiding parties to know what green meant in these woods. It meant trouble. It meant danger. It meant you grabbed your daughter and ran in the opposite direction while praying to whatever gods might be listening. But this green wasn't moving. It was just lying there. 2 shapes half buried in snow, not moving at all. He should have walked away. That's what any reasonable man would do. That's what a good father would do. You don't bring danger near your daughter. You don't risk everything for strangers, and you definitely don't risk everything for orc strangers who your people had been at war with for the better part of a century. Miles had never been particularly good at doing what he should. He moved closer. 2 female orcs, young by the look of them, wearing armor that had seen better days. Identical faces. Twins. Both of them barely breathing, lips blue with cold, skin that particular shade of green-grey that meant hypothermia was winning. They were dying, and they were dying slow. "Damn it," Miles whispered to the uncaring sky. Then he did what his wife would have done, what she always did when she saw something broken. He tried to fix it. Getting 2 unconscious orc warriors back to his cabin was not on Miles's list of skills he thought he'd ever need. They weren't as heavy as he expected. Malnutrition, probably. But they were still solid muscle and dead weight. It took him 3 trips, dragging them through snow that seemed determined to bury all evidence of his terrible decision-making. Ruby's face when he dragged the first one through the door was something Miles would remember forever. Not fear, not horror. Just pure, unbridled curiosity mixed with a healthy dose of, "Papa, what did you do now?" "Papa." "Don't," he said, already dragging the second one inside. "Don't ask questions I don't have good answers for." "Are they dead?" "Not yet. Help me get them near the fire." Ruby didn't argue. She never did when he used that voice. They positioned both orcs by the fireplace, stripping off wet armor that clinked with foreign metals and orcish craftsmanship. Underneath, the twins wore simple leather and fur. One had a scar across her collarbone. The other had a tattoo on her shoulder, some kind of orcish symbol Miles didn't recognize. "They're beautiful," Ruby whispered. Miles looked at his daughter. "They're dangerous." "So are you. Mama used to say so." And wasn't that just like his daughter, taking his dead wife's words and weaponizing them with the precision of a battlefield tactician? They spent the next hour doing what Miles had learned during the war: keep them warm. Get them dry. Wait. Either they'd wake up, or they wouldn't. Nature was cruel like that. Efficient. Ruby sat cross-legged a safe distance away, studying the twins with the intensity of someone discovering a new species of butterfly. Why do you think they were out there? Nothing good? Do you think they're bad? Miles looked at the two dying orcs in his living room, at their faces, so similar they could have been mirror images. At their hands, calloused from weapon work, but scarred in ways that spoke of more than just battle. At the way, even unconscious, they seemed to be reaching for each other. I don't know, Ruby girl. I don't know. The first one woke up at dawn, the one with the scar. Her eyes snapped open with the speed of someone trained for ambush, and her hand went immediately to a weapon that wasn't there anymore. She saw Miles first, then Ruby, then her sister still unconscious beside her. Then she tried to stand and immediately collapsed. Easy, Miles said, not moving from his chair. He'd positioned himself between the orcs and Ruby. Old habits. You've been out for 12 hours. Your body needs time. The orc looked at him with eyes that were trying very hard to figure out if she was in danger or if danger had found her by accident. She said something in Orcish. It sounded like a question. Miles shook his head. Don't speak the language. You speak common. The orc hesitated, then nodded. Little. Her voice was rough, like gravel dragged across stone. Where is this? My home. Found you in the snow. You were dying. Why save? It was a good question. Miles had been asking himself the same thing all night. Seemed like the right thing to do at the time. Still not sure it was. The orc looked at Ruby, who was peeking around Miles's shoulder with undisguised fascination. Child, my daughter. And before you ask, no, I'm not going to let you hurt her. I saved your life, but I'll end it just as quick if you make me. The orc nodded slowly. Understand. She looked at her sister, still unconscious. She okay? Breathing. Warming up. Should wake soon. The orc's entire body seemed to relax at that. Just a fraction. But Miles noticed. He'd spent enough time around soldiers to recognize love when he saw it. What's your name? Ruby asked suddenly, ducking under Miles's arm before he could stop her. Ruby? It's okay, Papa. Look at her. She's more scared of us than we are of her. The orc blinked. Then, impossibly, she smiled. It was small, barely there, but it was real. Name is Zarya. I'm Ruby. That grumpy man is my papa, Miles. Is that your sister? Yes, twins, Zarya. Twins. Ruby's face lit up like someone had given her the best present in the world. I've never met twins before. Can you tell each other's thoughts? Do you feel it when she's hurt? Can you— Ruby, Miles interrupted. Let her breathe. But Zarya was still smiling. Still looking at Ruby with something that wasn't quite trust, but wasn't quite fear either. Many questions, like small warrior. I'm going to be a hunter like Papa when I grow up. He says I need to learn patience first, but I think patience is boring. Patience keeps you alive, Miles said, the same thing he'd said 100 times before. Boring keeps you breathing. Zarya woke an hour later with less panic and more confusion. She said something rapid in Orcish, and Zarya responded in the same language. They went back and forth for a minute while Miles kept his hand near the knife on his belt, and Ruby watched with undisguised delight. Finally, Zarya switched to common. Zarya asks, why humans save us? Because your papa is secretly nice even though he pretends not to be, Ruby supplied helpfully. Miles sighed. Seemed like the right thing at the time. Still debating if it was. Zarya studied him with eyes that were sharp despite her weakened state. She had the same face as her sister, but where Zarya's expression was guarded, Zarya's was calculating. She said something in Orcish again. She wants to know what you want, Zarya translated. Humans not help orcs, not without wanting something. I don't want anything except to know you're not going to murder us in our sleep. Zarya laughed. It was short, bitter. If we wanted murder, we dead already. Would not be here. Fair point. Ruby moved closer, ignoring Miles's warning hand. What happened to you? Why were you in the snow? The twins exchanged a look. It was one of those conversations that happened without words, the kind only people who shared blood, or in this case, identical blood, could have. Left behind, Zarya said finally. Clan not want us anymore. Why not? Another look between the sisters. This one lasted longer. We disagree about things. Important things. Miles had spent enough time reading people to know a carefully constructed truth. When he heard one, they weren't lying, but they weren't telling the whole story either. What kind of things? Things that get orcs killed, Zarya said bluntly. Things that make warriors into traitors. Are you traitors? Zarya met his eyes. Depends who you ask. It wasn't a reassuring answer, but it was an honest one. The next few weeks were strange in ways Miles hadn't experienced since his wife died. The cabin that had been too quiet for too long was suddenly full of life again. Chaotic, confusing, cross-cultural life, but life nonetheless. The twins healed slowly. Zarya was the quiet one, always watching, always thinking. She'd sit by the fire and work on repairing their armor with a focus that was almost meditative. Zarya was the restless one, pacing the cabin like a caged animal whenever the weather was too bad to go outside. But it was Ruby who changed everything. The first time Miles came inside from checking his traps to find Ruby teaching Zarya how to braid hair, he nearly dropped the rabbits he was carrying. The second time he found Zarya helping Ruby with her letters, carefully sounding out common words with an accent so thick you could cut it with a knife, he realized something dangerous was happening. They were becoming family. The village found out, of course. Villages always found out. Hugo showed up on the third week with 2 other men and expressions that said they'd come to save Miles from his own stupidity. Miles, Hugo said, cleaning his spectacles, even though they weren't dirty. The nervous tick was in full effect. We need to talk. Then talk, but do it from there, not coming closer to my daughter. That's not, Hugo sighed. People are worried. You've got 2 orc warriors living with you and your little girl. 2 orc warriors, Miles. Do you understand how that looks? I understand that I found them dying and brought them inside. What was I supposed to do? Let them freeze? Yes, one of the other men burst out. That's exactly what you were supposed to do. They're orcs, Miles. They're the enemy. They're people. Ruby's voice came from behind him. She'd snuck up again. He really needed to work on that. And they're nice. Nicer than some humans I know. Hugo looked pained. Ruby, sweetie, you don't understand. I understand that Zarya helped me with my reading yesterday, and that Zarya showed me how to throw a knife properly so I don't hurt myself. And that neither of them has done anything wrong except be born green. There was a long silence. Miles felt something in his chest that might have been pride, might have been terror, might have been both at once. They can stay until spring, Miles said finally. Then they'll move on. But until then, they're under my roof, and anyone who has a problem with that can take it up with me personally. Hugo cleaned his glasses again. You're putting your daughter at risk. I'm teaching my daughter that kindness isn't conditional. That's what her mother would have wanted. He said his wife's name like a weapon, like a shield, because everyone in the village had loved her, and everyone knew she would have done exactly what Miles was doing. Hugo left, but the look on his face said this wasn't over. Inside, Zarya and Zarya were standing by the window, watching the men leave. They'd heard everything. Of course they had. You not have to do this, Zarya said quietly. We can leave. Find other place. You'll die out there. Winter's not done yet. Better we die than bring danger to you, to Ruby. Miles looked at his daughter, who was looking at the twins, with eyes that reminded him too much of her mother. The same eyes that had once looked at a bitter, angry soldier and decided he was worth saving. My wife used to say that the measure of a person wasn't what they did when it was easy. It was what they did when it was hard, when it cost something. He met Zarya's eyes, then Zarya's. You stay. We'll figure out the rest as it comes. Zarya said something in Orcish. Zarya nodded. Then, in slightly better common than before, she said, You honor your mate's memory. Is good. Is right. Ruby went to bed that night humming a song the twins had taught her, some Orcish lullaby about mountains and starlight. Miles sat by the fire, watching the twins speak quietly in their own language, and wondered what exactly he'd gotten himself into. He'd find out soon enough. The truth always came out. It was just a matter of when and how much it would hurt. The routine that developed over the next few weeks had the strange quality of feeling both impossible and completely natural. Mornings, Miles would check his traps while the twins did whatever morning rituals Orcs did. Ruby would wait late, stumbling into the main room with hair that defied the laws of physics, demanding breakfast with the authority of someone who knew she was loved. Zarya turned out to be a decent cook once you got past her tendency to season everything like it was going into battle. Zarya couldn't cook to save her life, but could sharpen a blade to the kind of edge that could split hairs. Ruby learned words in Orcish that Miles pretended not to notice were probably not appropriate for a 10-year-old. It was Isla, the village healer, who broke the silent standoff between the village and Miles's cabin. She showed up one morning with a basket of herbs and a determination that reminded Miles why his wife had liked her so much. "I'm not here to judge," she announced, brushing past Miles before he could protest. "I'm here because if you're going to insist on housing warriors, at least let me make sure they're actually healing properly." She talked to her herbs while she worked, muttering things like, "Yes, yes, chamomile agrees, and the wintergreen says this one's stubborn." The twins watched her with fascinated confusion. "Is she casting spell?" Zarya whispered to Ruby. "No, she just talks to plants. She says they talk back." "Do they? I don't think so. But she makes really good medicine, so we don't argue." Isla pronounced the twins healthy, gave Miles a look that said, "We're going to talk about this later," and left. But she came back the next week, and the week after that, sometimes with medicine, sometimes with bread, always with that knowing look that said she saw exactly what was happening in this cabin and approved despite herself. Neil showed up one evening knocking with that particular rhythm that only old soldiers knew. 3 knocks, pause, 2 knocks. The kind that said, "I'm armed but friendly." Miles opened the door to find his old war buddy standing there with a bottle of something that was probably illegal and definitely strong. "Heard you adopted 2 orc daughters. Came to see if you'd lost your mind." "Ruby's my only daughter." "That's not what the village is saying." They sat outside despite the cold, passing the bottle back and forth, while Neil studied the cabin with tactical eyes that never really stopped being tactical. They treating Ruby right? Better than right. They're teaching her things, protecting her. Yesterday Zarya showed her how to spot a stalker's print in snow. Zarya's been teaching her Orcish medicinal plants. Neil took a long drink. Then he tapped the porch 3 times with his fingers. Once, twice, 3 times. "You know what you're doing?" "No." "Good. Men who think they know what they're doing get other men killed." Another 3 taps. "Your wife would have done the same thing." It wasn't a question. It was a statement. And hearing it from Neil, who'd known her almost as long as Miles had, made something in Miles's chest unclench just a little. Yeah, she would have. They finished the bottle in comfortable silence. When Neil left, he paused at the edge of the property. "Whatever they're running from, Miles, it's probably bad. Orcs don't abandon kin lightly. Watch yourself." "I know." "And Miles?" Neil tapped the doorframe 3 times. "If it comes for them, comes for you. They're living in your house. That makes them yours to protect. War rules." Miles understood. In the war, your unit was your family. You protected them even when it was stupid, even when it cost everything. That was the rule. He just hadn't expected the rule to apply to 2 orc twins and his daughter. Winter deepened. The snow got higher. The nights got colder. And inside a small cabin at the edge of the northern marches, something impossible was happening. A family was forming, not by blood, not by species, but by choice, by proximity, by the simple act of breaking bread together night after night until strangers became familiar. Ruby taught the twins children's games with complicated rules that seemed to change whenever she was losing. The twins taught Ruby warrior songs in Orcish that probably weren't appropriate but made her laugh until her sides hurt. Miles taught everyone a card game his wife had invented that involved more bluffing than actual skill. It was Zarya who noticed it first. Miles was carving something by the fire, a small wooden bird for Ruby's collection, when Zarya sat down across from him. "You very good with hands," she said. "Make many things. My wife taught me. Said I needed a hobby that didn't involve killing." She sounded wise. She was. Miles didn't look up from his carving. "Smarter than me. Kinda." Better in every way that mattered. But she loved you anyway. It wasn't a question. Miles finally looked up. Zarya was watching him with eyes that understood loss in ways most people didn't. Yeah, she did. Never figured out why. Because you good man, even when you pretend not to be. Zarya paused, choosing words carefully. Ruby, she remind you of mate? Every day. It's a blessing and a curse. Understand? Zarya remind me of things I try to forget, but is also reason I breathe, reason I fight. Zarya looked at where her sister was playing some kind of hand game with Ruby, both of them laughing at something. When clan leave us to die, I ready to give up. But Zarya not let me. She say, we survive. We always survive. What did you do? Miles asked quietly. What did you do that made your clan leave you? Zarya's face closed off. Not angry, just careful. Not ready to say. Not yet, but... She met his eyes. We not here to hurt you. Not here to hurt Ruby. We here because you give us chance when no one else would. That means something, mean everything. It wasn't the answer Miles wanted, but it was the answer he was going to get, for now. The object appeared on a Tuesday. Miles only remembered it was Tuesday because that was the day he always visited his wife's grave. And this Tuesday, Ruby insisted on going with him. I want to tell Mama about Zarya and Zarya, she explained. She would want to know. They trudged through snow that came up to Ruby's knees, leaving the twins at the cabin with strict instructions not to burn anything down. The graveyard was small, just a dozen stones marking families who'd lived and died in the village. His wife's stone was the newest, cleanest. Miles had made sure of that. Ruby talked to the stone like her mother was sitting right there, listening, telling her about the songs she'd learned, the words in Orcish, the way Zarya could make a stew that made her eyes water but tasted incredible, the way Zarya could tell stories about Orcish legends that were both frightening and beautiful. I think you'd like them, Mama, Ruby said softly. I think you'd understand why Papa saved them. Miles said nothing, just stood there letting his daughter talk to stone and snow and memory. When they got back, the cabin felt different. Colder, not temperature cold, something else. The twins were sitting by the fire, but the space between them and the door felt like a chasm. What happened? Miles asked. Zarya wouldn't meet his eyes. Zarya looked like she was preparing for execution. Zarya started, then switched to Orcish, speaking rapidly to her sister. Zarya shook her head. Zarya insisted. They went back and forth in that rapid-fire way that twins did. Finally, Zarya stood. She reached into her pack, the one they'd been carrying when Miles found them, and pulled out something small wrapped in cloth. When she unwrapped it, Miles's world stopped. A silver locket, small, delicate, with flowers engraved on the front. The same locket his wife had worn every day of their marriage. The same locket that had disappeared the day she died. Miles didn't remember crossing the room, didn't remember taking it from Zarya's hands. He just suddenly had it, cold against his palm, impossibly present after 3 years of being gone. Where? His voice broke. Where did you get this? Zarya's face was stone. From village, from day of raid, 3 winters ago. The room tilted. Ruby was saying something, but Miles couldn't hear her over the sound of his own heart trying to break through his ribs. You were there. It wasn't a question. The raid that killed my wife. You were there. Yes. One word. One simple word that changed everything. Miles looked at the locket in his hand, at the twins standing there waiting for judgment, at Ruby, who was looking between all of them with wide, frightened eyes. Get out. His voice was quiet, deadly quiet, the kind of quiet that came before violence. Papa, Ruby started. Not now, Ruby. Please, Zarya said. Please let us explain. Explain? The word came out like a roar. You were part of the raid that killed my wife, that made my daughter grow up without a mother, and you've been living in my house, eating my food, teaching my daughter to trust you? We not kill her, Zarya said suddenly, her voice sharp. We there, yes, but we not the ones with blood on hands. Then who? The twins looked at each other. That silent conversation again. Then Zarya spoke, and her voice was hollow. Our commander, Orcish warlord named Drakmar. He lead raid. We just soldiers, following orders. Following orders. Miles laughed, but it had no humor in it. People have been using that excuse to justify atrocities since the beginning of time. We know, Zarya's voice broke, we know is why we take Locket, is why we try to remember faces, is why we keep evidence. She took a shaky breath. Drakmar killed 14 humans that day. Your mate was last. She fought, she brave, she tried to protect others, but Drakmar, he not show mercy. She died protecting the village healer's daughter, Miles whispered. Took an arrow meant for a child. Yes. The word hung in the air like a confession, like absolution, like damnation. That's why your clan abandoned you, Miles said slowly, understanding flooding in. You kept the locket. You kept evidence. You were going to testify against your commander. We testify to Orcish War Council, Zarya said. We tell truth about what Drakmar do, about how he kill for pleasure, not for war, how he violate honor codes. She touched the tattoo on her shoulder. This mark is mark of dishonor, mark of traitor. But we not traitors to honor, only traitors to monsters. Ruby had moved closer to the twins without Miles noticing. She was looking at the locket in his hand, then at Zarya's face. You kept it because you wanted to make it right, Ruby said quietly. You wanted to bring justice. We fail, Zarya whispered. Drakmar more powerful. He exile us. Leave us to die, and evidence die with us. Miles looked at the locket, at his wife's face captured in miniature inside, at Ruby as a baby smiling up at a mother she barely remembered now. You've had this for 3 years. You could have sold it, could have thrown it away, could have done anything with it. No, Zarya said firmly. We could not. Was only thing keeping memory alive. Only thing saying this was wrong, this was crime. We hope someday to give back to family, to say we sorry we not strong enough to stop it. The silence that followed was the kind that rewrote history, the kind that made you choose who you were going to be. Miles looked at his daughter, at the twins who'd been teaching her, protecting her, becoming part of her life, at the locket that represented everything he'd lost. You should have told me, he said finally. From the beginning, you should have told me the truth. We afraid, Zarya said. Afraid you kill us. Afraid you throw us out. Afraid... She glanced at Ruby. Afraid we lose only place we feel like people again. Miles closed the locket, felt the weight of it, the history, the pain, the impossibility of forgiveness that shouldn't be possible, but somehow was trying to be born anyway. I need time, he said. I need to think. Understand, Zarya said. We pack. We leave at first light. No. Everyone looked at Ruby. She was standing between Miles and the twins, small and fierce and terrified. Ruby! No, Papa, listen to me. Ruby's voice shook but didn't break. Mama died protecting someone. That's what you always told me. She died because she chose to stand between danger and an innocent person. She chose love even when it was dangerous. Ruby, that's different, is it? Ruby turned to look at him with eyes too old for her face. You saved them because it was the right thing to do, because that's what Mama would have done. Because that's what good people do, even when it's hard. She looked at the twins. They kept the locket because it was the right thing to do, because they wanted justice even when it was dangerous, because that's what good people do even when it's hard. Miles felt something break inside his chest, something that had been frozen for 3 years. They're not the ones who killed her, Papa. They're the ones who tried to make it right. Doesn't that matter? It did matter. God help him, it mattered. Miles looked at the twins. At Zarya, who'd taught his daughter to read better. At Zarya, who'd showed his daughter how to defend herself. At 2 warriors who could have killed them 100 times over, but instead had just lived. Had just been people trying to survive their own broken choices. I want to know everything, he said finally. Every detail about that day, about your commander, about what you saw. I want the truth. All of it. We tell you, Zarya promised. Everything. That night, the twins told their story, and Miles listened to how they'd been young soldiers in a unit that celebrated violence, how their commander had twisted honor into cruelty, how the raid on the village was supposed to be quick, supplies and weapons only. How Drakmar had started killing civilians anyway. How Zarya had tried to stop him and been beaten down. How Zarya had grabbed the locket from a body, not because she wanted to steal it, but because she needed proof. Needed something that said, this was real. This was wrong. They talked until dawn, until words ran out and only silence remained. Ruby had fallen asleep against Zarya's side. The orc was stroking her hair with a gentleness that looked foreign on Warrior's hands. I can't forgive this overnight, Miles said. I can't just make 3 years of grief disappear. We not ask for forgiveness, Zarya said. We just ask for chance to make it mean something, for chance to keep being people instead of monsters. Miles looked at his daughter, sleeping peacefully between 2 orc warriors who should have been enemies, who should have been unthinkable, who somehow, impossibly, had become family. Stay, he said, but no more secrets, no more half-truths. If we're doing this, we're doing it with everything out in the open. The twins nodded, and in that moment something shifted. Not forgiveness, not yet, but maybe the first step toward it, the first step toward healing, toward something new being built from broken pieces. 3 weeks later, Neil showed up at the door with news that made Miles's blood run cold. Orcish war party spotted 2 days north, he said, tapping his fingers 3 times against the doorframe. 40 warriors, led by someone they're calling Drakmar the Bloody. Miles saw the twins go completely still, saw the terror flash across Zarya's face before she locked it down. He found us, Zarya whispered in Orcish. Then in common, he found us. He come to finish what he start. Why would he come all this way for 2 exiles? Miles asked, though he thought he already knew the answer. Because we not just witnesses, Zarya said. We twin daughters of clan chief. Our testimony, it matter to Orcish honor courts. Drakmar cannot be warlord if we alive to say what he did. So he's coming to make sure you're dead. Yes. And he kill anyone who give us shelter. Is Orcish law. Harboring traitors is same as being traitor. Miles looked at Ruby, who was listening with eyes that were trying very hard to be brave. At Neil, who was already calculating distances and defensive positions with the automatic efficiency of someone who'd survived too many battles. At the twins, who looked like they were preparing to die. When will they arrive? Tomorrow, maybe day after, depends on weather. Then we have time to prepare. You not understand, Zarya said urgently. You need to send us out. We go, we lead him away. Save village, save Ruby. Absolutely not, Miles said. You go out there, you die, and I didn't spend weeks nursing you back to health just to let you throw it away now. But Ruby stays here, where it's safe, where we can protect her. Papa, Ruby said quietly, what are you going to do? Miles looked at his daughter, at his wife's locket now hanging around his neck, at 2 orc twins who'd somehow become part of his family despite every reason they shouldn't be. I'm going to do what your mother would have done. I'm going to protect my family, all of it. The next day, Miles stood in the village square with half the population staring at him like he'd grown a second head. I know what you're all thinking, he said, that I'm insane, that I'm risking everything for 2 orcs who don't matter, that I should throw them out and let nature take its course. That's exactly what you should do, someone shouted. Maybe. But here's the thing. Miles pulled out the locket, held it up so everyone could see. My wife died because a monster called Drakmar decided civilian lives didn't matter. These 2 orcs, they're the ones who tried to stop him, who testified against him, who were exiled and left to die because they chose honor over survival. Hugo stepped forward, cleaning his glasses frantically. Miles, even if that's true, it is true, and now that same monster is coming here, not just for them, for everyone who's helped them, for anyone who's shown them kindness, for this village. Miles looked around at faces he'd known his entire life. We can throw them out, let Drakmar have them. Maybe he leaves us alone, maybe. Or, Isla asked, or we stand, we fight. We show Drakmar that this village protects its own, all of its own, even the green ones. The silence that followed was deafening. Then Neil stepped forward, tapped the ground 3 times with his boot. I'm in. War rules. They're living under Miles's roof. That makes them family. Isla moved next. I'm not a fighter, but I'm a healer, and every fighter needs a healer. Hugo cleaned his glasses one more time. Then, sighing like a man accepting his fate, he nodded. My wife would have killed me if I let you do this alone. One by one, others stepped forward. Not everyone, not even most, but enough. Enough to matter. That night, the village prepared for war. Weapons were sharpened, defenses were built. Children were hidden in the church cellar, with the oldest grandmother standing guard, with a crossbow that was older than she was. Ruby wouldn't leave Miles's side, wouldn't go to the cellar with the other children. I'm staying with you, she said. With Zarya and Zeria. We're family. Miles wanted to argue, wanted to force her to safety. But he looked at his daughter's face and saw her mother looking back at him, saw the same determination, the same courage, the same inability to abandon people she loved. Stay close to me, he said. And if I tell you to run, you run. Understand? Understand. They came at dawn. 40 Orcish warriors in full battle gear, led by an Orc who was twice the size of anyone Miles had ever seen. Drakmar the Bloody lived up to his name. His armor was painted with red symbols that probably meant something in Orcish culture, but to Miles just looked like warnings written in blood. He stopped at the edge of the village. His voice carried across the frozen ground like thunder. I come for traitors, he said in heavily accented common. Give them to me, and I leave. Hide them, and all die. Miles stepped forward, felt every eye on him, felt his daughter's hand grip his coat, felt the weight of choices that couldn't be unmade. The twins are under my protection, under this village's protection. You want them. You go through us. Drakmar laughed. It sounded like rocks grinding together. Humans so stupid, die for nothing. Die for traitors who watched your own people fall. They didn't watch, Miles said. They tried to stop you. They tried to do the right thing, and that makes them more honorable than you'll ever be. Something flickered in Drakmar's eyes. Rage, maybe, or recognition. You, the human? The one whose mate I killed? Miles felt Ruby's hand tighten on his coat. Yes, she died well. Fought like warrior. I respect that. I respect you less for defending traitors who let it happen. They were soldiers following orders. They thought they were doing the right thing until you showed them what a monster looked like, and the moment they saw, they tried to stop you. Miles took a step forward. My wife died protecting an innocent child. These twins were exiled because they tried to bring you to justice. Seems to me they learned more about honor than you ever knew. The silence that followed was the kind that happened right before violence, right before the world changed irrevocably. Then Zarya stepped forward, Zeria beside her, twin warriors standing together the way they'd probably stood 1,000 times before. We not hide behind humans, Zarya said in Orcish, then switched to Common for Miles's benefit. We stand, we fight, but if we die, these humans live. You give word, Drakmar, Orcish oath, they live. Drakmar smiled. It was not a pleasant thing to see. I give oath, humans live. After I kill traitors and anyone who helped them. That wasn't the deal, Miles started, but Zarya cut him off. His only deal he make is Orcish way. She looked at Ruby, at Miles, at the village behind them. Thank you for showing us we still people, still worthy of mercy. She touched Miles's shoulder. Take care of her. Teach her to be brave like her mother. They moved forward. 2 warriors walking toward their death with the kind of acceptance that came from knowing it was inevitable. Ruby screamed. No, Papa, don't let them... But Miles was already moving, not backward, forward, between the twins and Drakmar. You want them? You fight through me first. Papa! Ruby's voice was pure terror. Neil stepped up beside him, tapped the ground 3 times. Through us! Isla moved forward, then Hugo, then a dozen others. A line of humans standing between certain death and 2 Orc warriors who'd somehow, impossibly, become worth dying for. Drakmar looked at them, at this impossible, ridiculous, beautiful line of stubborn humans who should have known better. Fools, he said. All of you. Yeah, Miles agreed. Probably, but we're fools together, and that counts for something. What happened next happened fast. Drakmar raised his weapon. The line of humans braced for impact. The twins screamed something in Orcish that was probably a battle cry and probably a goodbye. But the attack never came. Instead, a horn sounded from the north, then another, then a third. Drakmar's face went from confidence to confusion to something that might have been fear in the space of 3 heartbeats. A new group of orcs appeared, not warriors, or at least not just warriors, elders by the look of them. Older orcs with faces marked by time and scars and the weight of authority. They wore robes instead of armor, symbols instead of weapons. The lead elder spoke. Her voice carried weight that had nothing to do with volume. Drakmar, you stand accused. These twins bring evidence, bring witness, bring truth about your crimes. Drakmar's hand went to his weapon. Traitor's word means nothing, is not just traitor's word. The elder held up something. From this distance, Miles couldn't see what it was, but Drakmar went completely still. We have other witnesses now, other evidence. You crimes known, your honor broken, your name marked with dishonor. No. Yes. War Council has spoken. You exiled, you marked as kinslayer, as oathbreaker, as monster-wearing orc face. The elder looked at Zarya and Zeria. These twins, not traitors, these twins heroes who speak truth when others afraid. They restored to clan, restored to honor, restored to life. Miles watched the twins collapse, not from injury, from relief. From 3 years of being dead, women walking suddenly being told they were alive again. Drakmar roared. It was the sound of everything he'd built crumbling. I, warlord, I command. You command nothing, the elder said. You nobody, less than nobody. You oath to humans stands, you kill no one, you leave, you disappear, and if you ever seen again, you die. This is judgment. The 40 warriors behind Drakmar didn't move. They just watched their former commander being stripped of everything that made him someone who mattered, watched him become nothing. Drakmar looked at Miles, at the twins, at the line of humans who'd been ready to die. Then he turned and walked away. Not a warrior's walk, just walking, disappearing into the trees like he'd never been real at all. The elder approached, looked at Miles with eyes that had seen too much. You human who protect our kin. I'm human who protected people. That they happen to be orc is coincidental. The elder smiled. Good answer. She looked at the twins. You daughters come home. Come be people again. Zarya and Zeria looked at each other, had one of those silent conversations. Then Zarya spoke. We thank Council for judgment, for returning honor, but she looked at Miles and Ruby. We find different home, different family, one that choose us when we nothing, that see us when we invisible. The elder studied them, studied Miles, studied Ruby, who was hugging both twins like she'd never let go. Unusual, but the elder nodded. If this your choice, we honor it. You live as you wish. As free orcs with honor restored. Then she did something unexpected. She bowed to Miles, to the village. You protect our daughters. We not forget. Orcish Council remembers. Orcish people remember. They left as quickly as they'd come. And just like that, the war that should have destroyed everything was over before it began. Spring came slowly to the northern marches. It always did. But this spring felt different. Warmer, maybe. Or maybe Miles was just warmer. It was hard to tell when your house was constantly full of people. The twins stayed. Of course they stayed. Where else would they go? This was home now, the only place that had ever felt like home after years of being soldiers, being exiles, being dead women walking. They added a room to the cabin. Well, Neil and Hugo and a dozen other villagers added a room to the cabin. Miles supervised and provided food and tried not to get emotional about his neighbors building an extension for 2 orc warriors who'd become part of the community by sheer force of stubbornness. Ruby turned 11 in early spring. 11 in. She insisted on celebrating with orcish and human traditions, which resulted in a very confusing party involving human cake, orcish warrior songs, and a present from the twins that was either a ceremonial knife or a very deadly toy, depending on how you looked at it. Miles visited his wife's grave less often now, not because he loved her less, but because he felt her presence more in his life, in Ruby's laugh, in the twins' determination, in the impossible family they'd built from broken pieces. "I think she'd approve," he said one Sunday, standing in front of her stone. The silver locket hung around his neck, no longer a symbol of loss, just a reminder. "I think she'd look at all this chaos and say, 'That's exactly right. That's exactly what I wanted.'" The stone didn't answer. But the wind picked up, carrying the smell of new growth, of life returning, of things beginning again. Ruby found him there. She did that now, knew when he needed company. "Zarya's teaching me how to make Orcish bread," she said, sitting beside him in the grass. "It's terrible, like eating rocks, but she says it's supposed to be like that. Builds character." That's what she said. Ruby leaned against him. "Papa?" "Yeah? Ruby girl? Do you think Mama would be mad? That we love the twins? That we let them stay?" Miles put his arm around his daughter, around the girl who'd inherited her mother's heart. "I think your Mama would be proud. Of you, of me, of them, of all of us for figuring out that family isn't about who looks like you. It's about who stands beside you when everything's falling apart, even when they're green, especially when they're green." They sat there for a while longer, then Ruby spoke again. "The village is better now. People are less scared. Hugo actually smiled yesterday when Zarya helped him fix his roof. Progress. Do you think other villages will do this? Will accept orcs? I don't know. Maybe. Maybe we're just the first. Maybe in 20 years, people will look back and say, 'Remember when humans and orcs couldn't live together? How stupid were we?' I hope so. Me too." Miles looked at his wife's grave, at the name carved in stone, at the dates that marked a life too short, but he didn't feel the crushing weight anymore, just gratitude for what he'd had, for what he still had, for the impossible, beautiful mess his life had become. That night, dinner was chaos. Zarya had tried to cook something that was supposed to be human stew but tasted decidedly orcish. Zarya was arguing with Neil about proper knife-throwing technique. Ruby was demonstrating words in orcish that definitely weren't appropriate. Idla had brought vegetables and was introducing them to the salad like they were old friends. Miles sat at the head of the table and watched it all. This strange, wonderful, impossible family, human and orc, loud and chaotic, perfect in its imperfection. "Papa," Ruby asked, "what are you smiling about?" "Just thinking." "About what?" "About how sometimes the worst things lead to the best things. How sometimes you have to lose everything to find what really matters." Zarya raised her cup. "To family, to choice, to humans who too stubborn to leave orcs in snow, and to orcs too stubborn to die," Zarya added. They drank, they laughed, they lived. Outside, snow had finally melted. The first flowers were pushing through dead earth. Spring was coming, and with it, the promise of something new. Something impossible that had somehow become real. Miles touched the locket around his neck, felt its weight, its history, its promise. Blood makes you orc. Loyalty makes you human. But choice makes you family. And that was enough. Sometimes the greatest families aren't the ones we're born into. They're the ones we choose, the ones we build from impossible choices and stubborn love. If this story touched your heart, if Miles and Ruby and the twins reminded you that family comes in all colors, even green, then show some love by hitting that like button. It tells me you want more stories about breaking walls and building bridges. And here's the thing, I want to know what you think. Drop a comment below. Would you have made Miles's choice? Could you have opened your door to someone who reminded you of your deepest pain? What does family mean to you? Your comments don't just feed the algorithm. They feed my soul. They tell me these stories matter, that you're out there listening, building your own impossible families. And if you're new to Orcbound Tales, hit that subscribe button. Because every week, we're telling stories about the beautiful, messy, impossible ways that love breaks through hatred. About orcs and humans learning that the only real monsters are the ones who choose cruelty over compassion. Welcome to the family. All colors welcome here. Until next time, stay brave, stay kind, and remember, the best families are the ones worth fighting for.